Mary Fletcher Jones. Welcome to Conversations in Public Relations. Today our guest is Amy Shaw. She's Associate Director of Public Relations at SNM, a medical and scientific organization of 17,000 members. I've asked Amy here today to talk to us about her work in public relations for this organization, and especially about her unique approach to a media conference for the organization that I think will inspire all of you all with this best practice. Amy, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me today.
Amy, I saw you speak this summer about your experience with hosting a press conference for S&M, and you tried some very unique approaches. Can you tell us more about that?
Some of the challenges that we faced leading up to the press conference were limited resources from the press to attend. So approximately 2 weeks before the press conference, we started thinking, how could we bring the press conference live to press who may otherwise be interested in participating, but it's not feasible because of their budget, and also our organization had a limited budget for the press conference. So we heard about a tool called Ustream, and our first question was, is it easy to use, and how can we use that having no budget to do that or no particular resources set aside? So we actually started testing it out a few weeks before the press conference, and then started speaking with members of the press to say, how would you feel about participating virtually? Basically, if you're not able to come, would you still be interested in attending in a virtual way? And they said, well, that sounds really great, particularly for the trade press who each year cover our meeting live, all of the events. So it's very important that they have that authenticity of participating in the conference, not just seeing a webinar after it happened. However, through this Ustream, we were actually able to save it. We were able to put it on YouTube so that members of the press could access it later, and on our website within a matter of a few hours. So basically what we did is first tested the tool 2 weeks beforehand to make sure it was easy to use, work out the kinks that we would need, what is it going to take on site. All we needed was one person who was running a camera, and it was hooked up and running live. As mentioned, people were also able to ask questions that we were able to answer via Twitter. There's a chat function on Ustream that people can also turn off. So if you don't want questions asked at that time, you're able to control the volume of questions that are coming in. And then essentially a moderator reads them to the appropriate spokesperson during the press conference. And the feedback we received was that it was just like attending the press conference. But interestingly, beyond just the trade press, there were reporters, for example, who were based in LA or New York City. The press conference this year was in Toronto. It changes every year. Who really would not otherwise even have the ability to attend this because it was not immediately in their geographic location. So I think we also were able to generate a lot of interest that people felt just like they were there, and they could actually see what was happening with the other attendees in the audience, the cameras that were there, so they felt like they were part of the actual press conference, which made it kind of just a little bit more exciting for them and authentic.
So you had tremendous success with this press conference. What are some of the key takeaways that you're going to use for your next year's press conference? And what kinds of tips would you give to the communicators watching this program who might like to emulate your success?
Well, it's definitely a challenge, but I think a welcome challenge when you have had a success that was as successful as the press conference to emulate that again. But when I really look at the strategies that we used, what I would try again is really being flexible with the media. Sometimes you go in with a set idea of what you want to communicate. And I do think that you need to keep that main messaging in mind, because ultimately you do want to disseminate the messaging of your organization. However, I think you also need to be in tune to what the media are covering at that time, and also having really a feedback loop. So it's an ongoing relationship that you have with reporters, so that when you check in with them maybe 2 months out from the press conference, 3 weeks out, 2 days out, to see what types of stories they're covering, what's happening in the news, and not seeing that as a roadblock, but really as an opportunity for you to give them something new and something that is additional that relates to what they're already interested in. I think that overall, having a long-term relationship with the reporters really makes a difference, and being open to saying, how do you want to receive the information? Do you prefer to have, one thing we found out in addition to offering the press conference live was that in the past we had only given materials by hand to people who attended in person or sent them PowerPoint slides afterward. A half hour before the press conference took place, we had basically a virtual online press kit where we had all the fact sheets, all of the biographies of the speakers, the PowerPoint presentation. So it was really giving them all the tools that they would need to do their job well. I think that for this year's press conference in 2010, we'll definitely evaluate. We definitely plan to continue with the multiplicity of channels through which they can gain their information, whether it's through print materials, whether it's a website, online such as Facebook or the Ustream, but to really take the pulse and say, how are you getting your information now? The technology is definitely changing. Things that maybe weren't even possible 2 years ago are available and are great tools that are free or often a minimal cost. But at the same time, even though something's free, to making sure it's professionally run, to making sure that you're really doing it in a way that you're giving something valuable and factual to the people who are writing about this from a press perspective. Because I think at the end of the day, having credibility and even being able to say, we don't have the answer to that, but I can help you find out through these resources, really makes a big difference toward furthering the objectives of the organization or company or client for which you work.
Amy, thank you so much for talking to us today. I really learned a lot, and the best practices that you shared with us about press conferences and using Ustream, I think will be valuable to so many communicators who watch this program.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. It's a great program.
Thanks.